Greetings, class. We're going to be starting our lessons for this new unit directly into cellular respiration itself. If you'd like to review ATP, what ATP is, all that kind of stuff, look at our previous slides from the unit on photosynthesis, and we talk about what ATP is, how it's like a rechargeable battery, all that kind of stuff. But today we're going to get right into our unit, cellular respiration. We'll start first of all by talking about the equation for cellular respiration. And you can see cellular respiration, the equation looks a lot like an equation we've seen before, doesn't it? Looks a lot like the photosynthesis equation. In fact, cellular respiration and photosynthesis really are the same reaction, just in reverse. The products of one, here you can see here, the products of cellular respiration are the raw materials or other. For example, CO2 and water are the raw materials for photosynthesis, whereas carbon dioxide and sugar are the raw materials for cellular respiration, but happen to be the products of photosynthesis. There are three stages in cellular respiration that we're going to be looking at: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. Both these two are dependent on a very important gas that needs to be present. If it's not, those two stages won't take place. So let's go ahead and begin our study of cellular respiration. Let's first look at glycolysis. Glycolysis is actually a combination of two words, which you can see, the glyc, which refers to glucose, and olysis, which means to break down. So glycolysis literally means to break down glucose. Glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm, or sometimes referred to as the cytosol. And during glycolysis, the glucose molecule is broken into two pyruvate molecules, which is basically the glucose molecule split in half. It's a pretty long, complicated process, and it requires 2 ATP to start the process. We call that ATP an investment because you're investing those ATP to break the glucose down to produce the pyruvate, which in return are going to produce some more ATP. The overall reaction for glycolysis will produce 4 ATP. However, since you put in 2 ATP to start, and that's why it was called an investment, the net gain is actually only 2. You take those 4 total ATP subtracted by 2, and you have a gain of 2 ATP. The real purpose of glycolysis is not really about creating ATP because it doesn't really create much. It's more about this, producing NADH, also known as nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, which is a coenzyme. And basically, it's like Uber or Lyft. Instead of picking up passengers, it's picking up hydrogens and high-powered electrons. And it's going to deliver those to the electron transport chain. Okay, so glycolysis is really about setting the stage for later cellular respiration. So it's not a big producer of ATP, like I said, but it is helping to prepare for cellular respiration later when the serious amount of ATP are going to be produced. Glycolysis does happen very quickly. A lot of glycolysis is happening right now while you're listening to me, and it doesn't require oxygen, which is very important. This is what glycolysis looks like. You can see the glucose here. Those glucose molecules passing through the cell membrane and into the cytoplasm here. The introduction of the ATP will break the glucose into 2 pyruvate molecules. And during this process, 2 NADH electron carriers will be produced, and they will move on to the ETC, also known as the electron transport chain. And a net gain of 2 ATP will be produced because, remember, 4 are made, but 2 are put in. So the net gain is 2. This slide is from your textbook here. This is a nice one. You can see the glucose molecule, 6-carbon molecule. The introduction of the 2 ATP will break it down into 2 3-carbon molecules. These are your pyruvate molecules. Nice handwriting, huh? Your pyruvate molecules. Also created during this reaction is the 2 NADH molecules, which are going to go to the electron transport chain, and 4 ATP additionally are produced. But remember, it's not really 4, it's only 2, because 2 were invested right here to start the reaction. And these 2 pyruvate acid molecules, or pyruvic acid molecules, will move on to the Krebs cycle if oxygen is present. This is what determines the next part of respiration. If oxygen is present, aerobic respiration will continue in the mitochondria. If oxygen is not present, anaerobic respiration, also known as fermentation, will kick back into the cytoplasm, and glycolysis will take place again.